I'll see here the housekeeping rules. This is recording. We will do some brief poll questions during the program, and then there will be an opportunity for questions and discussion at the end. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Beth Remmes, and I work for Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, and I am a proud member of the coalition we're a mighty coalition. We have a lot of groups. We are, I just saw the chat. Yeah, I'm going to try to I have most of the slides, fortunately, so that's good. So we are working on permanent protections for the Blake Plateau. So tonight, we are going to learn what the Blake Plateau is, and I hopefully will all be amazed. And we will talk about some things that you can do to help protect it. And I think Allie Chase from the NRDC is on the call. I don't know if she wants to say hi quickly, but she's really been spearheading these efforts and dedicating so much of her time and life energy to this very worthy cause. So Allie, I don't know if you want to say hi quick now. I she'll definitely be speaking at the end more about what you can do and how to get involved.
Sure, I'll just say hello very briefly. Thank you all so much for giving some of your time to this. I really hope you enjoy the video and the presentation. And I look forward to chatting with you all about ways we can do something to ensure strong protections for this place over the long term. I am Allie Chase, she, her pronouns, and I'm in our New York area. I work for the Natural Resource Defense Council. Back to you, Beth.
So we're going to discuss why we care about this amazing place, the basics of coral reefs, and I think this part is going to be coming from Wild Cumberland, and then I have a video and a short-ish presentation, maybe about 15 minutes of slides and information. Allie will jump in with what we can do, and then we will open it up for questions.
It's been identified as the Earth's largest deep sea coral habitat, and it's only 80 to 200 miles offshore from Georgia, which is, as most of you know, not very far from Cumberland Island. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with Cumberland Island specifically, this barrier island is primarily owned and managed by the National Park Service, and it's about 20,000 acres of both federally protected wilderness and potential wilderness. So it's a really important place. There is designated critical habitat for multiple species. It features one of our Earth's largest remaining maritime forests, and it is adjacent to one of the only known calving grounds for the North Atlantic right whale. Some of you may know that more than 300 species of birds rely on this place, including several federal and state protected species. And it also has one of the largest freshwater lakes of any barrier islands, or the largest freshwater lake of any barrier island on Georgia. So as most of you can gather, it is obviously a very special place to some of us, and a very important place for the loggerhead sea turtle. As most of you may be aware, Cumberland Island is the largest nesting site in the state of Georgia for that particular protected species. So as wilderness advocates, we certainly respect and value our interconnectedness. Also sort of a sense of restraint. And we understand that no one thing exists alone. So the health and integrity of our wilderness and the marine ecosystems we're talking about tonight are interdependent. So when we protect our oceans and we protect our barrier islands and we protect our estuaries, we're actually reducing flooding and storm impacts. We are working to make sure that there are successful agricultural and fishing industries. It's just important for a myriad of reasons. Also, one thing I'll point out before we move on is that less than 1% of our offshore waters in the southeast are protected in some way. So you see the little star there, that's where Cumberland Island is for those of you who aren't familiar, and you can see the proximity of some of the features we'll be talking about tonight. So Deb, if you'll, thank you. So I want to make sure we're all sort of speaking the same language because we come at this from different levels of understanding. And I think having a basic understanding of coral reefs and their importance is probably helpful to contextualize Beth's presentation. These areas, coral reefs, are sometimes referred to as rainforests of the sea, and they're actually home to so many organisms. I'm going to let Beth talk a little bit more about that, but fish, urchins, snails, you name it. And they're living they're living things, these colonies, even though they're sessile and they don't move, they really are living things. They do several things that are really critical for all of us. They provide food, shelter, and breeding grounds for a number of species. They filter our water and create oxygen and nutrients for us. And in fact, they're part of that naturally occurring barrier against storms, waves, and floods that we understand so well, working to protect a barrier island. Fun fact, and which will become more relevant as we continue our discussion, is that more than half of our US fisheries species actually depend on these reefs that we're talking about for a portion of their life cycle. Now, here's a little bit of a differentiation I want to make before we continue. There are two types of corals, and I think many of us are probably most familiar with the shallow corals, but there are actually shallow and deep water corals. Shallow corals use photosynthesis for obvious reasons. They're closer to the light to make their food, and they grow a little quicker, so they can recover a little more quickly, and they only live at depths up to 100 feet. This has made obviously national and worldwide headlines given some of the recent bleaching events that have been happening. But deep water corals, on the other hand, are filter feeders. So they're a little slower growing, they have a longer recovery time, and they live a lot deeper. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight. But I wanted to make sure everybody understood this difference, because while we may be familiar with the bright, vivid colors of shallow coral reefs, some of the images you may see and some of the information that we'll share doesn't appear that way. And I wanted you to have an understanding for why, and that does not necessarily indicate the health of this particular habitat. All right, so if we can make all of our technical prowess work correctly, Beth or I, one of us, is going to share a short video with you. And then I'm going to turn it over to her now that I've caught my breath and settled in a little bit. Beth, I think we're good. We can probably try to share this for you so we don't have to go back and forth in hosting and cause any further glitches than our audience has already been patient with. But we're going to start with a short video, and then I'm going to turn it over to Beth so she can go a little bit more in depth about the Blake Plateau.
Perfect, thank you. And that sounded awesome, Jessica. It was super helpful overview, so thank you.
Given the proximity of so many millions of people that live along the southeast coast, it seems that, of course, this area would be very well known and we would know exactly where everything is, and that's so not true.
Pilot, are you ready to continue descent?
Pilot's ready.
We are out on the Blake Plateau off the coast of the southeast United States, ranging essentially from Cape Hatteras all the way down to the Bahama Banks off the coast of Florida.
Previously to the Okeanos coming out here and mapping more of this flat part of the Blake Plateau, this was all kind of originally just thought to be soft sediment. But these mound features really do shed light on how prolific these cold water coral communities are. One thing I think we can talk about a little bit is how the live coral is actually white in this type of environment. So these are actually live and healthy. I'm not speechless, obviously, because I keep talking, but this is, for me, really, really exciting.
The Million Mounds region is what we think is the largest continuous deep sea coral ecosystem discovered thus far on Earth. We're talking about an area about 7 million acres. There's been very little exploration work out here. That I think we're the first deep submergence vehicles that have actually been able to dive on this amazing feature. So it's really exciting to be out here today.
These mounds are made through hundreds of thousands of years of coral growing. They have cored down to the bottom of one of these, and at the base of it in the core, it was over 1 million years old.
What we see when we look at the Gulf Stream, there's a very tight correlation where you see the most dense coral mounds and the healthiest mounds, and where the Gulf Stream is strongest. The coral mounds influence the biodiversity of the seafloor by basically providing habitat structure. So a lot of things in the deep sea that we observe, they don't always have a place to settle in soft sediment that's moving around. They like to attach to something hard. So those coral mounds provide a great habitat upon which other things can grow, and that's where we tend to see a lot of the biology that we're interested in.
We keep finding these mounds, we keep finding these ridges, we keep finding these scarps that have evidence of life that was previously unknown to be there.
Oh my goodness gracious. Oh my goodness, it's a wall of coral. Look at that. Oh my goodness gracious.
This is so rare to be able to see something like this. He's huge. Look at this. This is 1.5 meters, at least, if not 2. He's humongous. Wow. Oh.
The beauty of these seascapes gives them an appreciation that you can't read about it and feel attached to it or understand its beauty and fragility like you can when you actually see it.
They used to think there was no life at the bottom of the ocean.
Boy, were they wrong.
Yeah, do you believe that?
It's just so beautiful to see it. And someone had asked in the chat how deep it is, and it is about 1,000 to 3,000 feet below sea level. So so what you're seeing is, well, there's probably a very technical name for it, but it is like a submergible video and all that goes down there, because obviously that's too deep. That film is not done by divers. So, all right. So we're going to be talking about, what is this? You're going to hear some things a few times, but that's how it sticks, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the threats, and then how a few things we can do to protect this sacred ecosystem. So again, this is where it is on the map that Jessica showed you. It is off the coast from Cape Hatteras down past Florida. And this is the area we are talking about the most, right here off the South Carolina, Georgia, a little bit of Florida coast here. And again, it's 1,000 to 3,000 feet below the surface, and it's about 110 miles, that distance from Cape Hatteras down to Florida. It is a hidden underwater plateau of at least 200 species of spectacular cold water coral that fuels the region's vast ocean biodiversity. It's enormous. It's about a 50,000 square mile hard bottom undersea plateau. And until recently, it was thought, as I mentioned on the video, to be soft sand. And then this is what the exploration looked like. So the NOAA, as you might know, of National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and academic institutions executed a comprehensive mapping. And what they discovered was shocking. The sonar revealed the largest deep sea coral reef known in the ocean. Now, granted, there's a lot of the ocean unexplored, so there could be more out there, but this is what we do know, and what we know is it is the largest right now. It's pretty amazing, and obviously a globally significant ecosystem. The Million Mile Mounds is one of the ones that was on that map. I think that we'll see again in a moment. And this is a coral highway, and it runs 300 miles from Georgia to Central Florida. And again, I know we kind of get nervous when we see reefs as white because we are worried that they are bleached, but this, the original name was Lophelia. I know it's changed recently, and I don't know the new name, but they are meant to be a glossy white. These are actually very healthy coral. And it's this color because it's so deep, it does not photosynthesize. It's in the dark. So that is why they are that color, but they are very healthy. And here we go. Here's the map right here. So you can see my cursor. This is the Million Mounds here. And then there's also the Central Blake Knolls. And the Richardson is up here closer off the South Carolina. So we've been doing, especially here in Georgia, we've been talking a lot about these areas. And then as Jessica mentioned early on in the beginning slide, is that these could eventually be a climate refuge because they're, these, as the oceans warm, these deep sea corals are hopefully going to still be really healthy and intact. So coral and other organisms may need to end up migrating to this way as waters warm elsewhere in the ocean. And, we always like to know some of the little clues here, right? Because it makes us really kind of identify with what's here and, be able to, again, like just picture the life down there. So this coral community supports a diverse array of sea animals. There's about, let's see, about 200 species of coral. So that's like this top one here. And then like the sea pen here on the right. And then close to 100 species of fish. So this is the red anglerfish right here. And you might be able to guess the name of this one. It's a deep sea lizardfish. And I love these guys too. They're so cute. So this is a flapjack devilfish on the top left and a squid, bobtail squid here, and a squat lobster and a golden crab. And so this is just like a little hint of what's down there and along with the video. One of the reasons why this area is so important is that you will notice, like when we talk about the Gulf Stream, it goes right along here, which is right over that Million Mounds area. And so the Gulf Stream sweeps across the Blake Plateau, bringing life and productivity to the southern states. And the Gulf Stream feeds the corals with abundance of food that falls in what scientists call marine snow. So it's really part of it's a nutrient factory. So as you can see what happens, they interact in an important way that helps sustain and fuel the productivity of this area and all the fisheries connected to this. The Gulf Stream provides a steady stream of microscopic organisms that feed the deep sea corals, and then the corals in turn process that organic matter into essential nutrients for the entire ecosystem. That's why we're calling it a nutrient factory. And as the Gulf Stream current rolls over the plateau, it's circulating the nutrients back and forth and upshore as waters off the sea. So it's really important to the health of our ocean and to the fisheries. And then at the surface, like Jessica mentioned some of these too, but large fish like swordfish and marlin ride the Gulf Stream. Sea turtles spend the early portion of their life living amongst the sargassum seaweed as they feed and hide from the predators. And seafaring birds forage the Gulf Stream waters, taking advantage of this productive environment. So as you can see, it's really very important to the ecosystem. It also has some other benefits that might feel a little bit harder to quantify under cultural and regulating supporting. It's possible that, think of these animals that can live down here in these extreme conditions in the cold temperatures and with no light, and thinking like all the biomedical research maybe that could come out of that. And then also under cultural, Allie might have more to say about this later because she on our coalition, Queen Quet is part of that in the Gullah Geechee Nation. She works very closely with her. And this is culturally significant area for the Gullah Geechee and the corridor. It is thought that enslaved people from Africa, some of the ships that did not make it across, that this area is actually part of those burial grounds. And then of course, as you know, like as things move along the coast, people who have been here a long time, really rely on these fisheries, on the plants and animal life here too. And that's been culturally significant for generations. There is some commercial and recreational fishing here too, and that's a fine line because you'll see this come up a little bit under the threat as well. But for the most part, as you could see in the Gulf Stream, is that this nutrient cycling in part of Blake Plateau and all the mounds, like it really does help sustain these fisheries and keep them healthy. Because this is so deep and so far offshore, it really isn't so much used by recreational fishermen. So that is really not going to be a threat. The ones that it probably impacts is the royal red shrimp, golden crab, and wreckfish. Again, and it helps them, this Blake Plateau and the coral reefs help sustain them as they travel through these waters. And you know, it could be a spot for novel chemicals. I actually just got my master's in biomimicry, and biomimicry is innovation inspired by nature. So it's not just bioutilization. It wouldn't just be like trying to harvest things, but really saying like, how does nature survive in extreme environments? How does nature produce light, right? So down here, there's a lot of phosphorescence and different sorts of ways that nature produces light without, photosynthesis. So those are questions that and people might ask and look to these creatures to help solve and wonder if maybe we can design in a way that is a little bit more creative and environmentally friendly than we currently do for some things. And then, as we mentioned, this could be a climate, a refuge for the deep sea coral, hopefully securing their long-term survival. So even as the shallower waters warm up, hopefully this part of the oceans will stay intact. All right, so why do we want to protect this? And what are we trying to protect it from, actually? I hope you have some sense of maybe the whys right now. And just to say, like, this is protected right now, short term, not forever. We have about, I think, 4, 5, 6 years maybe left into the protections that are there. And I know a lot of people, I recognize names from my years at the Sierra Club and other things. And environmentalists, we are generally like waiting to the last minute, like with like Okefenokee, I'm sure you're following, like the mine, the drills are about to hit and we're like, no, stop. Like this is a chance, unlike a lot of the environmental issues we face, to like put permanent protections in now. Like we are not, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It is in the near future. So this really gives us a chance to be strategic and deliberate and creative to protect this ecosystem that is already pristine. Again, we're not trying to protect something that is partially destroyed. And how often do we get the chance to do that? Like we get the chance to say this place is perfectly intact and it's sacred and it's beautiful, and let's just keep it this way. And it's such an amazing place to be. Again, I know a lot of you've been in this work for a long time and we don't often get to intervene at this part in the system. So some of the threats that might happen, ocean industrialization. So, oil and gas, certainly drilling is always a possibility. You can see in these pictures. Wind turbines would probably be closer to shore than this, but, still thinking about our extractive mindset, right? Like our culture is always looking for ways to bigger, better, faster, stronger, more money, right? So this is always going to kind of be a threat. Mining of rare earth minerals as we look to continue to electrify, things like manganese, the things you see on the left are going to be in demand. The good news is that a number of years ago, there was some sample mining here and they did find the manganese to be low quality. And the cost of deep sea mining is so high that there'd probably be very little rate of return on that. So I always try to talk about the importance of a circular economy. There was something recently published by the Rocky Mountain Institute that said more or less the same thing. Technology is continuing to change and improve, needing less minerals and mining resources, and the ability to be able to reuse them is continuing to improve all the time. So if you find yourself in a discussion about this and someone's like, well, we need those minerals, not from here. We really don't. No one's ever going to make their money back on that. It doesn't mean that someone won't try, because they might. So that's really important to put their protections in place, but I just want you to know we're not really giving up like a very rich source here by putting a protection in place. Oil and gas development, of course, that is always an issue and a threat. In addition to like possible spills, just the drilling alone causes a lot of sediment plumes, which, you know, can choke out the life there in that system. And commercial fishing. The good news is that this area is not used quite a bit for commercial fishing, because we certainly, you know, we don't want to put people out of jobs. Like, this is a balance, right? We're not trying to say someone's bad. We really just trying to all figure out how to work in harmony with this ecosystem. The things that would not work out well here are like the long lining, and, you know, depletion of population. So just really having the sustainable requirements in place like we currently do. Fishing in the water column can also harm Blake Plateau through unintended bycatch. So that's like, you know, when we'd accidentally get the turtles in the nets. Again, those developments are always improving. Those nets are improving with sea turtle escape hatches and all of that. So I know a lot of people are working on that as well. And long lining, of course, has that high bycatch rate. So, you know, we're hoping to protect these, but also not put people out of business. And there are some maps being developed, again, that show that there is very little overlap with where these Blake Plateau protections would be, along with the commercial fishing. Ocean carbon dioxide removal. This is interesting. You know, again, people are always looking to make money and find ways, and we do need to take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. We just want to be sure that like no one wants to put like a seaweed farm out that far and block out or help, you know, disrupt these ecosystems. We just want to be sure that everything is done in a way which we don't always, right? We don't plan well. We kind of do it and then see what happens, but really kind of use more of that precautionary principle. Like if there's a chance it could not work out, like let's just not do it. So just being really careful. And again, that's a point of putting in these permanent protections, right? We're taking that precautionary principle, like we are protecting these amazing coral beds and these reefs, and we might not even know all the amazing things that are doing as part of the ocean, but we're gonna protect it and not try to make money from it. And then here's a great picture that shows the benefit. As you can see here, like right now, unfortunately, there's not a lot of biodiversity like elsewhere on land as well. In the past, it was much more rich. And so you can see as there's layers of protection, the more biodiverse the area can be. And then my last slide, or second to last slide, I mentioned that I do this in faith communities a lot with Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. So I like this quote from Rumi: everything you see has roots in the unseen world. All traditions have this. We talk a lot about the things that are unseen are eternal in Christian doctrine, and faith in the things unseen. And it's a reminder that it's not like a land monument. It's not like something we can see. We'd have to watch this video and believe this video to know this is even out there. It doesn't mean it's not important. So it's having faith that these scientists that are researching this and telling us that yes, this is so important, that it is worth protecting just as much as something that we are seeing on land with our own eyes. So I know Allie probably has some other suggestions too, but I will tell you that on our website, this QR code brings you there, or you can always look afterwards. I'll drop it in the chat. GIPL.org under advocacy and coastal, you can sign a petition that actually has gone to the president and some senators and representatives already to say we would really like protections for this. And it is important. People do listen. I'm actually meeting with one of Senator Ossoff's representatives tomorrow, and I have a whole bunch of names printed out and letters and things to show them that people care about this. And then also, as we continue this work, there will probably be opportunities for more public comment, maybe public meetings. And if you give us our name, then we can say, oh, this person's interested in Blake Plateau, and we can let you know, like, hey, there's going to be a public meeting to discuss if this is important to you. Here's the information. So that's the other reason why you may want to sign that.
That was fantastic, Beth. I do want to give Allie the floor in just a second to address a couple of things, but thank you. If you'll pop the host back over to Devon, which doesn't say Wild Cumberland anymore, but we'll continue to be able to sort of move through so we can show people how they can take action. But there's a couple, Allie, I'm going to show 2 more slides if you don't mind, just as we kind of continue to give people context for the place, especially understanding what might have brought them here tonight. So, Beth, this is so much incredible information to take in. I thank you for giving us such an in-depth sort of explanation of what the plateau is, why it's valuable, what the risks to it may be, and how we can protect it. But I think some of our supporters too may appreciate, Deb, if we can move to the next slide. You know, Cumberland is sort of known for its sea turtle nesting site and the density of loggerhead sea turtles in particular that nest on its undeveloped beaches. So this is a map. We've got the source there in the corner, and I'll be sharing this presentation with everyone following the presentation who registered. But this shows the density of sea turtle sightings in some of the areas that we've been talking about. And this includes all of the species that you see listed here. So I'm going to just show you too. This is the sargassum seaweed that is designated as critical habitat specifically for the loggerhead sea turtles. So I didn't mark it with a star this time, but I think most of you sort of know where you're going. So at this point, I think it'd be great, Allie, for you to be able to weigh in, especially considering, thank you all for bearing with the rough start we had, on anything you'd like to add to the context and sort of overview that Beth gave us tonight.
Sure, just very quickly, because I know people probably have their own questions, and it's always more interesting to hear what folks are thinking about. But I'm dropping into the chat a link to the coalition's website. There's a ton of other resources on that. There's, in addition to the cool video that kicked us off, there's another video at the bottom that was narrated by Queen Quet in person, and so she can talk a little bit about some of the cultural connection that the Gullah Geechee do have to this place as sort of a graveyard of many of their ancestors that didn't survive the Middle Passage. And I also want to flag that on the conserveblakeplateau.org as well. When you scroll through, you can actually see the opportunity to take action there as well. So you can scan that's QR code. You can also go to the website, and that has an additional letter that if you want to submit that, we collect them all and make sure that they get to folks in the administration to encourage them to be thinking about this. And there's a website right there on the screen, so you've got that too.
This is amazing. I mean, we certainly, Wild Cumberland believes that the Blake Plateau deserves strong and permanent conservation measures. I mean, I think most of us would agree our future probably depends on it. So yeah, I mean, this link will take you to an easy form. You can personalize as much as you're interested in doing. But I hope that what you guys have learned tonight and what we've been able to see will motivate you to do that immediately after this presentation. We had such a rocky start with our technology. I want to make sure I use this opportunity to thank Sierra Club Georgia chapter, who really helped make this event possible, as well as Beth from Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, and of course, Allie from the NRDC, to make sure that the public has access to this incredible information and can help advocate for protections along our coast. We're going to have a few poll questions in a minute, but I want to make sure to open it up in case anybody who happens to have been really engaged or maybe had a specific question tonight while we've got all these folks in the same room. If you've got a question that hasn't been addressed yet in chat, I want to make sure we have an opportunity to do that. And despite our technical limitations, I am going to try still to present you these poll questions. So in a minute, when you see some poll questions pop up, please take a minute to let us know what you think. This information that you'll share with us is really important for a lot of reasons. But I'm going to mute. I can't function quite as well as I did when I was on my other screen, but I'm here and I would love to make sure we have a chance to address everybody's questions.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I'll just try to answer one of the questions. And there's also props to you, Jessica, for putting this together, so thank you. Michael asked about how we would protect it. Right now, we are working to do it, probably an overlay. Like, it would be great if it could be designated as a national monument, and then maybe part of our marine sanctuary. And that map with the different neighborhoods, it might need to be done in chunks. It's such a big area, it might be too hard to ask to do it all at once. But we are really trying to work with elected officials in the senator's office. Again, these letters are mostly going to President Biden right now, and hoping to get the ball rolling in that way. Gray's Reef has been a good partner to talk to. Like, they were at in DC with you over the summer, Allie, and they came back and they said, all we heard about was the Blake Plateau. So they know it's important to, I think they'll probably be hosting meetings to see, if there's ways that we can work together with them, because they are a marine sanctuary close to that area. So that's kind of where we're leaning right now, but Allie might have something to add to that.
No, I think that's great. Thank you.
And I would say, talk about it, talk about it. Tell people, like, did you know there's this deep sea coral reef off of Georgia? And share the video and share the signatures. And it does add up. People actually do care if there's public interest.
Hi, can I ask a question? I just wanted to get clarification, Beth. When you were talking about CDR, carbon dioxide removal technology, and the threats it could potentially pose on the Blake Plateau, I was a little confused, and sorry, I must have missed a really important thing you said about it, that covering sort of the surface of the water could pose a threat to the corals, but since there are deep sea corals that don't use photosynthesis, and I'm sure they get little to no light penetration, what exactly is the threat of having something at the surface of the water?
No, that's a really good question. And it's, I don't know that anything is actually happening. I think we sat in a room and we dreamed of all the terrible things that could happen. And it would more affect that nutrient cycling. So if there were farms set up and things that affected what fish and organisms could swim through that area, or how things are again, that, think of that marine snow it talked about. So anything that might interfere with that process, that in and of itself wouldn't hurt the corals, but it would probably hurt the ecosystem in general. Again, I don't really know if, I can't imagine they would actually try to do it out that far. If that was going to happen, I feel like it would probably be closer to shore. But also maybe there'd be someone trying to sink something, making bricks out of carbon, and hey, let's drop them all on the seafloor on the Blake Plateau. It's hard to really know, but we were kind of going worst case scenario and all the things that could happen.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Thank you, Beth.
Sure.
I just wanted to jump in with maybe just another point on that, and then I see a couple of questions in the chat I'm happy to take a crack at to start. CDR, there's a lot of different things that they're talking about right now. There's not a ton of data on exactly how it's going to impact the water column as well as the benthos, and in a variety of different places. There isn't even really regulations in place for how all that is going to be handled. So I just want to flag that is a very future threat, but I do think it's one that conversation around is just ramping up faster and faster. And so you do have an opportunity when putting protections in place for an area to try and think about a whole range of concerns and try to put some longstanding pieces in place. I saw that there was a question in the chat about the nature of the current protections. So there's a couple of things I would highlight, and I know, Beth, you mentioned a few of these. So there are protections in place for against or not allowing oil and gas drilling and exploration. Those expire in 2032. Right now, there's also, the consideration about whether or not you'd want to be doing deep sea mining. And as Beth flagged, there's questions about the value of the particular resources that would be found on Blake Plateau. That's another sort of area where there isn't a ton of data about what the impacts would be. Some of the scientific papers that have come out have talked about the possibility of deep sea mining creating sort of sediment clouds. Any sort of sediment cloud could potentially smother the corals. So that there's just a host of things that are, again, not happening currently there, but should the doors open on industry, it's a lot harder to close things once you start moving in that direction. There's also protections on the seafloor from a number of types of commercial fishing gear that can be harmful to the seafloor itself. So, bottom trawling and things like that. In many areas, although not all, but in many areas where there is deep sea coral, there are protections that have been put in place by the Fisheries Management Council to ensure that the deep sea corals are protected from those gears being used. Now, people have known about the fact that there's these amazing corals down there for a long time. They haven't realized the full extent of it. It was only a paper that came out in January of this year that kind of mapped everything together, and people were like, whoa, this is even bigger than we thought it was. So there are some areas that haven't had those protections put in place yet. One of the challenges, though, when you do put protections in place through the Fisheries Management Council, is that those protections can be revoked by a future council. So there's some concerns about the durability of some of those protections and whether or not they could be rolled back in the future for folks that have sort of worked on Oculina Bank and seen the interest there in possibly rolling back some of the protections. That is a concern that folks have with deep sea coral protections. So I just wanted to answer those two things very quickly.
And I'm seeing it looks like the poll is up. Jessica, if you'd like us to participate in that.
Yeah, feel free if you've got a minute before you go. Make sure you answer these questions. They're just 4 of them, but it helps to give us some information that will be useful as we move forward. That was a really helpful explanation too, Allie. Thank you.
Allie in the chat, Barbara asked about the extent of what we're working with Gullah Geechee community.
There's a number of different folks within that community, within that space that we've been connecting with. We've been working probably closest with Queen Quet with the Gullah Geechee Nation, but there's a number of other groups that have indicated support for this, and we're continuing to try and reach out to the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor and Chamber of Commerce and other entities to educate them about this effort that's underway and see what the capacity is like to work together on this. One thing, I'm gonna find it really quick and also drop it into the chat, but we did a poll recently in Georgia, and there was an oversample in South Carolina. And it was from likely voters, and we went out and chatted with folks a little bit about, or the pollsters did, not me personally, but they talked a bit about deep sea coral protection and how people felt about that, and specifically the Blake Plateau, what they thought. And also, I would be so interested when you're, Jessica, when you get all of the polling results at the end of this, to see how it compares just to this other broader poll, because it was really interesting to see that roughly 80% of the respondents were consistently supporting strong protections for deep sea corals for the Blake Plateau. And it was across all demographics. It was, independents, Democrats, Republicans, lean Democrat, lean Republican, et cetera, et cetera. And I bring this up in relation to the Gullah Geechee concept flag because it was also, that message was also, you know, tested amongst the public, and the numbers, particularly of Black voters that were really resonated with that argument, was really pretty high. So there's more information in that blog, and more importantly than my voice on that blog is there's a memo that's you can find under recent polling, and that's the link to the impact research one pager on it. So you might find that interesting.
I
But
was
if-
wondering if anybody could elaborate on the nodules that are down at the bottom of the sea. I had seen something about that before, where they produce electricity and they produce oxygen. And I was wondering if anybody knows where they came from, what the evolution of the seabed has produced that.
I will take a quick stab at it. They are manganese nodules, and they're part of the rare earth minerals, and they are used, manganese as a component, I believe, that's used in car batteries and other things that we're doing to electrify. So it is an important mineral. I want to say it was like the 70s or 80s. It was explored a bit in this area, and it was found to be not really concentrated or really high quality. It's my understanding that probably more the risk of this mining this material right now is off closer to Hawaii. And some of those, like, is it our waters, is it international waters? It's kind of hard to know. I think, you know, it's under debate right now, and there actually isn't a lot of mining happening at the moment. Like, there is a if you want to drop me your email in the chat, I will send it to you. There is a coalition, and they're basically, people are trying to decide, can we do this? And if so, how do we do it? And who gets to do it? Like, it's very much up in the air. But what I will continue to say is there is also a lot of research. Rocky Mountain Institute just published a paper about the need for a circular economy and how we can actually decrease mining even as we continue to electrify. So I feel like that is the message I want to keep sharing, because we've been doing this extraction thing for so long, and it has not been working out for us, and we need to find a better way. But if you want more information, I do have a number of links. Please feel free to send me your email, or mine is beth@gipl.org. Send me an email, and I will send you a bunch of those resources. I'm happy to do that. I bug Allie and Lisa at the NRDC every time I find something about it, and I keep sending it to them. So I know I have them somewhere in my sent items.
And I saw the article that you're talking about these areas actually creating oxygen, and it's wild. I don't know more about it. I immediately bugged our scientists about this. I don't think anyone totally knows exactly how this is working, and I think it's a really important question that we're all going to need to do some more research on. I think I'm nervous even to say, like, oh yeah, that's definitely a reason to ensure this area is protected, because it's just such a novel concept. So it was, but I totally know what you're talking about, and it's yeah, wild is the first word that comes to mind. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, now that you said it, I did see that too. And I think what I get from things like that is, like, it's just such humility. Like, there's so much we don't know. Like, yet another reason to not tamper with this amazing ecosystem, because who knows what we could unleash inadvertently, right? So
I think you're in good company here with folks who share your sentiment about restraint, Beth. We don't know what we don't know, and I think we have to proceed carefully in this space. So this context, I think, has been exceptionally helpful for those of us to whom this is new material, and certainly those of us who are learning still probably discovered more that we didn't know about this incredible place. It's pretty mind-blowing to think that it's only 80 to 200 miles off the shore of Georgia, the Carolinas, and Florida. So this has been a really fantastic discussion. I know we're sort of at our time for about an hour, and I really want to thank everybody again for their patience as we work through the technological components of this. As a volunteer organization, we sometimes run into glitches that we need to resolve. So thank you. And there may be a couple more questions here in chat, so I'm gonna scroll back up and see at least if I can work all these components and make sure that we've addressed all these. Thank you first and foremost to everybody who participated in our poll. That information is very helpful for all of us. So there was a question here about, is there any conversation regarding the name Blake Plateau and what might better describe it and better get our interest and attention? Who is Blake? Thanks. Beth, Allie, either of you want to take a stab at that question?
Beth, do you have an answer ready on this? I definitely know that it was one of the, was it one of the ships? Was it the ship that explored the area? I have to pull it up again.
Yeah, I think it was one of the first exploratory submersibles that first initiated this research that it's named after.
I'll pull it up for you. Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah,
a good
that sounds
that is
right.
a good question. And I put, it's also was named a Hope Spot. I put a little YouTube link to there. I feel like that might talk about the history of it a little bit more as well. And that link's in the chat. And there is talk about if it becomes a monument, could it have a different name? Maybe that will be our next poll. Email us with what you think we could suggest it be called in someone's honor, something else. But yes, it's possible that if it does become a monument or something else, it may end up having a different name. That's a good question.
Okay, so I pulled it up. AI apparently tells me it's named after the USC and GS George S. Blake. So let me find the link for that, and we can all make sure that AI is not hallucinating on us.
Yeah. What's it named?
I noticed that in part of it, it was called an escarpment. And people familiar with Tarzan movies knows about the escarpment.
Oh, God, that's Gordon. Yeah, everybody's going, what?
Yeah,
All right, well,
not what that is.
I was going to say I'm going to have to do some homework. Thanks for dropping this link for us in there, Allie. This is really interesting and helpful information. We've included a little bit, obviously, on our website at wildcumberland.org, but it doesn't have nearly as much as the NRDC has managed to put together for public consumption. So we certainly encourage you all to check out the resources that have been dropped in chat way back earlier in this conversation. I can tell you we'll circulate this link and some of these resources to everybody who registered for the event. Certainly also, we encourage you to join us for our trivia nights every Wednesday in September, where we're celebrating National Wilderness Month and where some of this new knowledge about Cumberland Island and the Blake Plateau may pay off big and help you win a big prize. So you can find those details on our website and our social media, but I want to make sure and give a special thanks to Beth from Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, G. Weber from Sierra Club, and of course, Allie Chase from the NRDC for being with us to help field some of these questions and information tonight. I'll stick around for a few more minutes, even though you can't see me, for anybody who has specific questions, but I look forward to communicating with you all going forward. Thanks so much for being here.